Hey everybody, welcome to Portland Open Studios. Welcome to my studio. Thank you for coming. Let's see who's here. I did see Haley earlier. Hey Haley. Yeah, thanks for coming. I'm glad you guys could join. I hope you had a chance to take a look at or to listen to Chaz Martin's talk. I know his work and his beautiful stuff. Definitely check him out. My name is Mark Dunst, and I am an abstract painter. I'm from Portland, Oregon, or living in Portland, Oregon currently. And what I'd like to do today is take a look at some paintings. I'll give you, kind of talk about a little of the thinking behind them. I'll give you a little bit of my background. We'll take a brisk studio tour and talk about process and materials, and then there's some time at the end that I'm hoping that you guys have questions. And in fact, I'm kind of counting on you guys to have questions. So I think that's a challenge that I just threw down. So let me take you off the tripod. And start looking at some work. I work non-representationally, and I've gotten rid of the material subject. There's no object or figure or story I'm trying to tell. And pardon me while I find the right way to hold this camera. And I'm not overly concerned with the outcome either. Because what I'm searching for is contained within the process of painting itself. It's a process of discovery. And if you think of the word process, ideas like change and flux and movement come to mind. And I knew that those words were important to me in describing my work. And so I wanted to dig deeper. And so I looked at the writings of philosophers that talk about process and change and flux. One of the earliest philosophers to talk about it, his name was Heraclitus, and there is a quote that is attributed to him. And I'm sure you know this quote, where it says, "You can't step into the same river twice, because it's not the same river, then you're not the same person." And so this idea of process and change and flux and movement is a constant flow beneath the, surface that surrounds us and ties everything together. Even if you look at the tiniest of things, an atom, a proton, a quark, a string, a process has to be present before any of those can exist. So I'm not focusing on an outcome and getting rid of the material subject has really kind of opened up a bigger world for me to explore in my painting. But with process and change comes uncertainty and doubt and not knowing. And by design, I struggle with that uncertainty in my painting, and I try to get lost. It can be an uncomfortable place to inhabit. I try to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. which is easier said than done. And that causes friction. And if I'm listening, I know that this friction is trying to tell me something. It's trying to point out something that's important. Maybe something I missed. Sometimes it's telling me when I'm not being honest, or that I'm looking for some sort of external validation. But it's always telling me that there's something important on the other side. And so I try to document that struggle. In my paintings, you can see those ideas of movement and flux. There's a sense of losing and finding, and losing and finding again. It's a continuous search. There's a depth and an energy and a sense of time. There's this fluctuation between kind of complexity and simplicity. Each mark denotes a moment in time. Each mark kind of echoes the marks before it. I had an artist friend mention to me one time and described my marks as fleeting memories. And I always liked that idea. And so I know when a painting is finished, when I can, look at it as if for the first time, and I'm not really thinking about any sort of external validation. And I can kind of connect with it on an authentic level. And I'm sure you can imagine the twists and turns a painting can take. And my art practice has taken some twists and turns. So much so that I had to take a 25-year detour. Oh, I cracked myself up when I came up with that idea yesterday. So I was born and raised in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I went to the University of Colorado at Boulder, where I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts in painting. And my senior year, I got a job as an illustrator, a part-time job as an illustrator. And when I graduated, that turned into a full-time gig. And so I jumped both feet into a graphic design career, and I didn't look back for a really long time. And in those years, I had positions as illustrator, graphic designer, art director, creative director, and partner in these brilliant marketing and design firms in Boulder and Denver, Minneapolis, Los Angeles, and Portland. And a lot of the projects that I worked on, particularly in the last half of my career, were user interface and interactive and user experience design projects. And kind of this common thread throughout all of them was we were always looking at the influences and motivations and biases that organizations and their customers and users had. And we were always looking for that common ground and a way to make this authentic and empathetic connection. And so, it took me 25 years before I could pick up a paintbrush again. And so what I've done now is I've kind of turned that behavioral lens onto my studio practice. And so I'm looking at the influences and motivations and biases that I have, for myself and in my work. And I'm looking for that authentic and empathetic connection with it. But it doesn't happen unless you show up in the studio every day. And, even when you don't feel like it, or especially when you don't feel like it, you need to show up. I just moved into this new space a couple weeks, I think 3 weeks ago now. And I'm at 1801 Upshur Street in Northwest Portland. And it's a bit bigger than my previous space. So I'm really enjoying the extra room to move around, and I'm looking forward to making, bigger works and working on more projects. This area will be for art storage. So I've got the next big thing on my project list is to build this art storage unit. I have a bunch of paintings in storage right now that I need to bring in, but I have to build that first before I do. This area will be for finishing, varnishing, installing hanging wire, as well as boxing them up and getting them ready for shipping. I have a small sitting area with a few of the books from my library. And I really enjoy this space. I have started all of those books, but I haven't finished one of them. And it's hard. I tend to not like to read in the studio because I'm in this mindset of wanting to kind of, be in front of the canvas. And so maybe I should carve out a little more time so I could at least finish one of them. And of course, my desk, which I was thankful that I needed to clear off for this talk. It's usually piled high with miscellaneous junk. This is where I'll work on my stretched canvas. And of course, I have my easel where I work on smaller pieces. And then this big wall will be for unstretched canvas. And these two paintings are not usually there. I just brought them out for open studios. But you can see that there's a rolled canvas back there. It's about 7 by 10 feet. And I bought it a couple of years ago. And I knew there was no way it was going to fit in my old studio space. I think it was just wishful thinking. So I'm really looking forward to kind of tacking that up on the wall and throwing some paint at it. This is my drawing wall. I have 2 4x8 sheets of masonite with this smooth coating on it. So it's just this huge drawing surface that I can use. And so I can either tape up a couple of pieces side by side or roll out a larger horizontal one. And I use 42-inch by 10-yard rolls of heavyweight drawing paper. And of course I have couple of workbenches and a place for my tools and materials. And so in my process and my materials, my tools are really basic, real simple, and minimalist by design. I feel like there's this complexity that I'm trying to get to in my painting, in this complicated relationship I have to working on my painting, that I needed to simplify everything else around me so I could really focus on that. Any creative process, has a starting point, and then there's just this messy middle until eventually you can get to a finished project. And so my work really focuses on this messy middle. At the start, it can be a lot of fun and exploring and just playing with new ideas. And eventually you'll hit roadblocks and obstacles and dead ends. And it's only until you can kind of push through those, even if you have to double back at times. If you can push through those, and there's many that come into play during the process, but eventually you stick with it and it starts to coalesce into a painting that I'm happy with. I have a variety of entry points. There's really no wrong answer at the beginning because anything that I put down will end up being covered in the end anyway. And so it's really an opportunity to play and to have fun. I may come in with some big shapes and keep adding those shapes. Or I'll start with just a flood of color and start adding lines and shapes and color to it. I mean, start off with these smaller chips of color and keep adding them to the canvas and exploring color mixing and color relationships until the entire canvas is full. And as the painting progresses, I'll start adding more and more colors. I'll start bringing in some line until I get to this ugly, messy part where I'm completely lost. And this is intentional. I try to get here because I'm looking for ideas and relationships that I couldn't plan. And so I try to get here and then try to work my way out. And as the painting unfolds, I'm looking for interesting relationships. I'm looking for differences in the marks in a way that I can bring them all together. You know, at this stage, it's just a cacophony of marks. It's just noise. And I try to pull them together and get them to kind of work like working with an orchestra, to where every mark has its own part and they're all working towards playing the same song. And in the process, there's this expanding and contracting and expanding and contracting. And for instance, in this work in progress, I'm in a contracting phase. And so I know this, and I know my next move is going to be to do something more expansive, to come in with bigger gestures or bolder color, larger shapes. And so it's this continuous expanding and contracting, like taking deep breaths. And I also look for things that I'm avoiding. For instance, I know that I've been avoiding working with predominantly pink and purple. And so I'll start working on that, trying to figure out why. Why am I not connecting with it? How can I connect with those colors that I've been avoiding? And I may never find the right answer, but I always need to try. My drawing process is very similar to my painting process. There's layers and layers of marks. I start anywhere. But the key difference is being that there's fewer variables that I need to work with. I don't need to concern myself with color. And there's an immediacy to drawing. I don't need to wait for paint to dry or to mix colors or to load my brush again. For as much energy as I have, I can continue on the work itself until I just fizzle out. And so I really enjoy working on these bigger drawings. There's just a vigorousness to it and a physicality that I don't get in my paintings. And even I have one of those exercise fitness bands. And when I'm working on these drawings, it automatically detects it as exercise and thinks that I was working out. So I'll take that. I need all the workouts that I can get. My painting setup is very straightforward. Again, very minimalistic. I'm trying to make things as simple as possible, but no simpler. And that goes with my palette of colors that I use. I use 2 yellows, 2 blues, and 2 reds, plus white. It's a warm and cool yellow, a warm and cool blue, and a warm and cool red. And with the work that I do, I find I can mix whatever colors I need with just these 6 colors. And I'll take these 6 colors and mix what I call my mud color. And I'll use that mud color to, at times to darken a color or to tie the palette together or to get to some interesting grays. But again, I'm really just trying to keep things as simple as possible. Some other tools that I use in my painting are these Neo-colored crayons, these woodless colored pencil sticks. I find that they give me just a real nice, thin, delicate line that I like to put into all my paintings. I also have this pencil I tape to this rod. And that, again, that gives me some interesting marks that I can make. I'll use this little hex screwdriver to scratch some line work into the wet paint. And of course, I have a spray bottle to kind of help reduce the drag of the brush. I have a hair dryer that I'm constantly using because I hate watching paint dry. And then I have a sander. And when I get a few layers on, I'll kind of sand down parts of it to kind of reveal some of the colors and textures underneath. And so I use that quite a bit. My pencil box is even simpler. I use these jumbo woodless pencils, this big graphite block, this graphite puck, this tailor-shaped graphite puck by Artgraph. It's just an interesting shape that, just the shape alone, makes me want to put down different marks. I like working with this. I have this weird graphite putty, and it's a lot like a kneaded eraser. And you just pinch off a bit and smear it onto the paper. It has these kind of bold, thick lines. My favorite is this graphite powder. I can use it dry and make this kind of soft effect with it. But I like to add water to it and make this kind of graphite sludge. And I'll dunk my hand into it and go to the paper and start finger painting. So all these big marks that you see are finger painting with that graphite sludge. And my painting and drawing informs each other. And so that finger painting, you'll also see in my painting. I'll dunk my hand in pink on this one and start finger painting. And so it's a lot of fun. It really is like being a kid again. Put you back on the tripod. And so that you can see by design that it's not overly complicated. I'm trying to keep the things around my painting simple, so I can kind of work on that, what I feel is kind of a complicated, complex relationship with the work. And I want to save my energy for that. And so what I'd like to do now is take any questions that you guys may have. But real quick before I forget, if you're not already, certainly follow my Facebook page and my Instagram. Sign up for my newsletter on my website. It's very infrequent. In fact, I try and send them out every quarter, and between the last two emails was like a year. So it won't be cluttering your inbox. Check out any works that I have available on my website. I also have some smaller works available at Side Street Arts here in Portland. Check those out. And also be sure to check out the artist coming up next in Portland Open Studios, Catherine Freshley. She does these beautiful, peaceful and wild skies. So I definitely recommend checking out her talk and her work. So with that, I would like to take any questions. I'm going to thumb through my feed, but if you have some, please throw them my way. Oh yeah, Chrissy, you found that? Yeah, it is amazing. It is amazing. She's talking about that graphite powder. Hey, Elizabeth. All right, charcoal. Hi, Marilyn. Yeah, I do use charcoal. I don't know if you saw the works over here. I don't use it too much. I usually just play around with it. But these two are charcoal, and these were just experiments. I put down a bunch of scribbles as dense as I could get them, and then I would kind of slam the side of my fist down and drag that charcoal into the other element. Let's see if I see any other questions. Hey, Robin. So Robin's asking, do I start with a limited palette in mind, or does that evolve? It almost always, I don't start with colors in mind. It almost always evolves. I showed you those color chips, as a way to start. So I might put a bunch of colors down, and then I'll look to see if I see some relationships. And then I may continue, and then often I'll continue down that path, and then it will kind of twist and turn. I may start off with greens and blues, and then all of a sudden yellows and oranges and reds creep in and start to take over. So it is a meandering process, and I generally don't start with a fixed color palette in mind. Hey, Ted, good to see you. All right, see if there's any other questions. Hey, Joyce. Joyce is asking if I ever use oil over acrylic. No, I don't use oil. It's just, like I said, I'm constantly using a hairdryer to dry the paint because I'm just too impatient to work on that. So I haven't used oil in a really long time. But I do know people that do use oil with acrylic. I know there's definitely some considerations to keep in mind when they do that. Hey, Michael, good to see you. Thank you. Haley, what is my favorite medium to use? That's a toss-up. It's almost equal between graphite and acrylic paint. There's a lot of overlap, but I get very different things out of each one of them. Like I said, my graphite is much more immediate and a vigorous process, but the colors and the texture that I can get in painting is also very interesting to me. So I would say I'm not taking the wimpy way out, but I like both graphite and acrylic. Take a look at some questions, more questions. I think I've got a couple minutes left. See, I answered that one. Hey, Eric, good to see you. Hi, Terry. Hi, Jan. Yeah, definitely an opportunity to play and have fun, and that's really important to, I think, any artist's work. Hey, Eric. So papers, Eric's asking what kind of papers I use, and for my drawings, I use a heavyweight Strathmore. It's kind of buried over there. A heavyweight Strathmore roll of paper that comes in a 42 inch by 10-yard roll. And I also love to paint on paper, and it's a variety of stuff. And I don't have it in front of me. I know it's just that a lot of times it's that heavyweight paper. The bigger stuff that I really like to work on with the ragged edges, much more heavyweight watercolor paper. I really like to work on. So yeah, just a heavyweight drawing paper for my drawings, and then a heavier watercolor paper for my painting. Taking a look at any more questions. I think I answered all those, and I see, Terry's asking what paper do I use? Oh yeah, Terry, that's the Strathmore heavyweight drawing paper. It comes in these big rolls that I get at Blix. Terry, this studio is 855 square feet. My previous studio was 300 square feet. And so it's really nice to have a little bit of extra moving around and breathing room. So hey, thanks everybody. Thanks for coming by and getting a virtual studio visit in. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you get a chance to take out some more of my work online, and certainly take a look at, this is the last day of Portland Open Studios. Check out Catherine Freshley, who's up next. And thank you again. All right, take care.